So it all started in Egypt in 236 BC when Eratosthenes measured an arc of meridian using the shadow of the sun. His arc wasn't quite what it is today. It was about 100 kilometers out, but you've got to start somewhere. The next known measurement in Africa was by Delacale, who measured an arc about a degree north of Cape Town. His measurements were not quite right, but in 1820, Sir George Everest came to the Cape, and he suggested, in 1820, and he suggested that the mass of Table Mountain, as you see behind you, behind me, was the culprit in this thing. In 1836, Sir Thomas Maclear came to the Cape, and he remeasured Lacale's work, but he took into consideration the mountain mass, and he extended the arc 500 kilometers north of Cape Town. Then Sir David Gill, a great man, an astronomer at the Cape, 1879, and he was a great proponent for geodetic infrastructure for the economic benefit of a country. He also proposed the measurement of the arc of the 30th arc of meridian from Cape to Cairo, and he also suggested that the arc should be connected to the Struve arc, which we heard about earlier, and that will give us an 11,650 kilometer arc. Surveying conditions were not easy. The terrain is flat, instruments were heavy and large, and that great theodolite weighed 660 kilograms. Dress code was very strict, and there we have Dapper Dan, the surveyor man. Baselines, lots of baselines to control the scale, and the dress code was not quite as strict, although crew chiefs had to wear top hats, as you can see. Then it took a little while to finish that arc, and in 1909 an IAG commission was set up, and that gap in the arc was completed in 1954, so it took 75 years to complete. Which slide am I looking at? The Struve arc was inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 2005, and there's a movement at the moment to include the 30th arc in that inscription. 1957, satellites were launched. That was only 3 years after the arc was completed. And the arc was really for the estimation of the size and shape of the Earth, and for satellite determination. So effectively, the 30th arc became a dinosaur. There was a report in the 1936 IAGG that the reference frames in Africa show a delightfully local individuality. Artemis radio astronomy was built in 1961 by NASA. It was a 26-meter antenna, and that now provides IRS with the VLBI, SLR, GPS, and Doris measurements. In 1981, Africa Doppler Survey, we heard about that earlier as well, used the transit system. There was no IGS available at the time. Coordination was very difficult, and NMOs were not fully involved with the project. 1989, the first GPS satellites were launched, which made, so it's been around for a while, as you can see from the photograph. They greatly improved the positioning and efficiency and accuracy, and it was even better when the IGS was established in 1994. The Africa Reference Frame is a project to unify the frames of Africa using continuous base stations, and also to work towards a uniform vertical reference frame for Africa. So there we have the stations that are involved in the operational data center. What I want to point out is really the gap that we have from Angola through to Sudan and the Sahara countries. Otherwise, we have good cooperation in sharing of data. We also have good cooperation on an interdisciplinary basis, where we work with seismology people, meteorology, space weather, private enterprise, and even the mining groups. So we have better cooperation with those groups. So we've gone through the whole evolutionary cycle of Eratosthenes and his measurements. We've gone through the arc measurements, we've gone through satellites, and on to VLBI and continuous base stations, where we can now measure the speed as well. So as much as Africa is the cradle of mankind, so it is the cradle of IAG and GGOS. No surveyors and geodesists were hurt in the presentation of this, in the making of this presentation. Thank you.